And so finding that seat where you can be fully at ease, hip supported, and breath fluid. And just settling in through each cycle. Give ourselves 60 more seconds here just to feel into our breath this evening. And with your next inhale, we can allow the eyes to open if they're closed. Let's take our fingers together, interlaced in front of us, and see what it feels like to turn the palms away and push them out at shoulder height so we get some nice shoulder engagement here. And then we'll flip that hand direction and squeeze the hands in towards the sternum, pulling those elbows out so that we feel some finger interlock. Exhale, palms turn away and we extend. And inhale, the palms reverse and we come back into sternum level and just engage the elbows towards the edge of the room. Relax and we'll walk ourselves out into a first seated fold. Remember, hands, elbows, or forehead can be the support here, whatever feels most appropriate for you this evening. Now we'll give ourselves 15 more seconds here. Just settling into this fold, getting some low back expansion, especially if you were in class yesterday, just taking the space that you created and making sure it's yours before practice really starts to move. And we'll walk ourselves back up into seat. And we're gonna work through some seated cat-cows here. So whichever heel feels most settling to you, closest to the body, and it won't really matter. Hands going palm down, roughly around the knees. They don't need to be perfectly on the knees. You can grab the ankles here if that's better. Bottoms of the feet can be together if that's better for you too. And we are going to exhale. And as we exhale, the hands gripping on the legs are going to allow us to get back into this flexion. And then inhale, fingertips pulling forward, pushing that sternum, thrusting that sternum forward into the extension, chin lifts. Exhale, we fall back, chin tucks, we hang here, we round here. The hand engagement allows for some extra flexion, extra space in the shape. And then inhale, pulling forward again. The hands allow this time for extension, but extra space just with the activity of the arms pulling the sternum through. Let's do that a couple more times. Just exhale back, get into your flexion, inhale forward, experience that extension, looking for full spinal articulation, really trying to get the stack of the spinal column working in a forward backward motion as deeply as it is available to this evening, at least at this point in the evening. And the next time you come to neutral, let's pause there. Big breath as we refeel the spine integrate, and we will transition to hands and knees tabletop. Checking on the shoulder engagement, getting your back into neutral, feeling the strength in the arms. Let's curl our toes. We'll lift our seat, roll our way back into down dog. Create the depth of the shape with the spine and let the hamstrings do what they have available to them. Knees can bend, really pressurizing the hands, and then we'll eventually walk our way forward and find our fold at the front of the mat. Inhale to half lift. Create that big flat neutral engagement, and then exhale. Oh, back into your fold. Settle into that fold. Let the spine now elongate into the fold space with the interplay of gravity. Let's bring our awareness to our sacrum and we'll roll ourselves up vertebrae by vertebrae, stacking the spine, bringing the musculature along the spine into activation, and eventually finding our top space. Mountain pose. Hands can be at the side, they can be at heart center, whatever feels most appropriate for your body this evening. And then when you're right, we're going to inhale our hands on top of our shoulders. So we don't need to plant fully, right? We can have fingertips, and the more you spider the hands up, the less shoulder space you need. And then with the hands maintaining that shoulder positioning, we're just going to slide our left foot back and find our first little modified crescent. Elbows are shoulder height-esque. Kind of like we're doing a bad version of flexing here, I guess. And then with an exhale, we'll release the hands. Hands come together at heart center, and we'll return to the front of the mat. Sweep the arms up and overhead. And exhale through forward fold. Feel how the shoulder capsule responds to the forward fold this time, how that shoulder capsule works into length along the spine, then drift your awareness to your sacrum. We'll roll ourselves up vertebrae by vertebrae, stacking the spinal column, bringing the musculature back into play. Eventually we'll come to a mountain pose at the front of the mat. Hands, once again, can be at the side, they can be at heart center, whatever feels most appropriate for you. Eventually, we're going to bring our hands onto our shoulders once again. Elbows up at that shoulder height level, just a unique positioning for our hands, and we'll slide the right foot straight back and into modified lunge. Side two. Thinking about the strength in the back leg. Back leg's really important here. We're going to play with that back leg this evening. And then when you're right, when you're ready, hands dropping to heart center, and we're returning to the front of the mat. Sweeping the arms up and overhead, and exhaling through forward fold. Inhale to your half lift, flat neutral spine, extension of that spinal column. Release back into your fold, plant your hands, walk back into down dog. Create the length once again. Use the extra shoulder capsule space here to help elongate. And then we'll drop down to hands and knees. And we'll sink back into child's pose. And we'll settle in our child's pose. And breathe in our child's pose. and be at ease in our child's pose. Letting the back relax, letting the shoulders relax. We'll give ourselves 15 more seconds here. And when you're right, fingertips grip into the mat. We're going to inhale, pull ourselves forward to hands and knees tabletop. From hands and knees tabletop, curling our toes, lifting our seat, and rolling back into our down dog, creating the depth. And then let's do this. We're going to take our left foot in front of our right and to the right side of our right, so lateral edge. And then the right foot's going to come in front of the left and over to the left side of the mat. Left foot sweeps out, and we'll just cross leg walk our way forward until eventually one foot makes it to the front position, counter foot mirrors so that we're in a traditional forward fold. And as you get that traditional forward fold, take that extra little bit of high calf insertion space that we get from that crosswalk and take that depth into your fold, drift your awareness to your sacrum. We'll roll ourselves up vertebrae by vertebrae, nice and slow, stacking the spinal column, creating the strength of the musculature, each vertebrae stack supported by musculature engagement. We'll come to our top space and bring our hands together at heart center, mountain pose. Activate the quads here, really feel the strength. We're gonna take the left leg up, little early single leg balance, half Karate Kid. Left foot slides straight back. We land in our modified version of crescent. And then really check on that back leg strength. We want no knee bend here. We wanna be fully engaged in the quad and hamstring. And keep that as we just roll to warrior two alignment. We'll blossom the arms out into that warrior two space. Get nice and wide. And then we're going to come back into crescent hand, stay at heart center. We want to maintain this quad flex, this hamstring flex. And then we're going to take like a 10% bend in the back knee, just so we can feel what it's like to load the patella there. So we just feel that load, and then we come right out of that and roll open into warrior two again. It's a big warrior two this time. We're a little bit wider in our stance. Make sure we're not collapsing in on that front thigh, and roll back up into full and traditional crescent. Hands come together at heart center as we return to the front of the mat. Little asymmetry as we have that right side anterior space. Settle your way back into balance, and then right knee comes up into our half Karate Kid. We'll slide the right foot straight back into this nice, stable balance, good vertical torso. Hands staying at heart center, quad is flexed. So make sure that back leg is flexed. And then we roll that open and we blossom open into two. Big expansive space here. Keep the quad flex, hands come back to heart center as we find our way back into this modified crescent. We take that little 10% knee bend just to load the patella and feel what that's like. Then we lift back out into our full approximation of the shape, roll back open into two and blossom into the width of this space. Really thinking about that expansiveness here. And then we roll to a traditional crescent. Good strength here. Hands come together at heart center as we return to the front of the mat. Sweep the arms up and overhead. Exhale through forward fold. The bottom of your fold with your top of your head pointed towards the floor
bring the arms up into cactus. So fingertips should be roughly pointed straight down towards the floor. Elbows actively lifting up to shoulder height. And then relax the arms and settle into the depth that comes into that shape. It's a subtle depth that's in the middle of the back. We want to take that space, then plant the hands and walk to plank. And from plank, we're going to slowly, gently, delicately lower ourselves to our belly. And from our belly space, let's slide our hands underneath our shoulders. Lay those fingers out as wide as you can get them. Really create that impact with finger engagement. Flex the quads so the kneecaps are lifted. And just breathe here. Relax. Slide your hands underneath your forehead for a little crocodile pose. Feel the upper back, middle back musculature relax, but torso relax, especially along that posterior chain as you settle into this crocodile. So there's this young man making his way home from his job, and it's pouring rain and he's sopping wet and he's super fatigued. Just been an absolute day of days, working 15 hours. Not uncommon, but it's not feeling great. And then he walks in and his partner is at the table and she's waited to make dinner. And she's waited to eat dinner with him. It's late at night. He pulls out the dinner and heats it up, and the two of them sit down, but he's clearly not his normal self. Last 10 seconds here. And when you're ready, slide your hands underneath your shoulders, bring some strength into the musculature just above your knees. Press yourself up to hands and knees tabletop. From hands and knees tabletop, let's curl our toes. We'll lift our seat. We'll find our way back in a down dog. Get that depth into your down dog. Take the right foot and extend it straight back and behind you. And then we'll step the right foot forward and into lunge. Sweep up, traditional crescent. And then bend that back toe. Get your quad flex first, then bend the back knee. And then we're coming up and out of that. So you feel what it's like to get into the top of this shape. Now, most of us, when we come up, the heel stays super high. So instead of keeping that heel high, push the heel down, but keep the quad flex. And then you really get that calf expansion. Then we're gonna roll open to 2. And now it's already a longer version of 2 just because we put the depth into that back leg. Make sure the weight is balanced between the front and back foot. And then we're gonna take the arms straight up and overhead. Keep them up and overhead and roll to 1. So it's just a torso rotation here. We want to maintain the strength of this back leg. Spin the left heel up and reconnect to crescent. Drop the hands to heart center. And we will take the torso down so that it hovers just an inch over this right thigh. Push back through that left heel. Lengthen through that space, then drop the hand, step your right foot back into down dog. Now we should have got some nice space in that right hip. Really take that in, incorporate it into your down dog, and then the left leg will extend straight back and behind you. Step your left foot forward into lunge. Sweep your way up to crescent. Bend, flex the quad, then bend the back knee. Then come all the way back up. Note how your heel's likely high. Push all the way back into that calf space without losing the quad engagement. Then roll to 2. Big, expansive 2 here. When you're right, arms reach up and overhead. We turn the torso towards the front of the mat and the front of your room. Right heel spins up, hands come to heart center. Torso comes down and hovers. This loads that left hip. Want to feel that engagement, then release the hand, then step the left foot back and take that deeper approximation of the joint. And we'll walk our way forward to fold. Balance the weight between the toes and heels and drop your head into forward fold. Think about relaxing the low back musculature as you do so. Drift your awareness to your sacrum, and we're going to roll ourselves up vertebrae by vertebrae, coming all the way into our top space, hands coming together at heart center. And we will offset the fingers and interlace. You can do this with the palms towards you or the palms away, whatever feels appropriate. With an exhale, we're going to push the hands away and sink the seat back in a chair. And then inhale, we're coming back up. Hands are coming to that spot where we were seated, where we're pulling actively like the elbows are trying to engage towards the edges of the room. And the fingers are getting this active pull against one another. And then we will exhale, sink, and extend. Inhale, we come back and we get that arm engagement. Exhale, sink, and extend. Remember, this is tailbone back, not knees forward. Inhale, we'll come back to mountain, pull. And now this time we're going to keep the pull and we'll sink into chair. So there's a lot of upper back musculature active. Then release the hands straight out in front of you and take that extra space into your chair. It's upper back space that translates here. Push back through your hamstrings, fall into fold or sink into fold. Inhale into half lift. Exhale back into fold. Plant your hands, walk into plank. Create that nice stack of the arm structure. And slowly, gently, delicately lower yourself to your belly. You come onto your belly, slide your hands underneath your shoulders. If they're not there or they're not in a position where you're comfortable, flex the quads. Kneecaps lift. Lift the forehead maybe a quarter of an inch, half inch at the most. And feel that upper back musculature shelf. It is kind of a combination of subscapular and suprascapular musculature. And it is musculature that is pretty weak in comparison to the rest of our shoulder structure. When you're right, relax. Let the hands come down and rest on the forehead, and let your forehead come down and rest on your hands would be a better way to describe that. And as you're doing that, think about that shelf of musculature kind of just at the top of the scapula, really relaxing, really recharging here. Trying to bring that musculature back so that it can support us when we do get up into our next version of down dog. And we're going to give ourselves about 30 more seconds here. So a good long-ish recovery. So this young man's partner starts asking him about what's wrong. And eventually it comes out that he just doesn't feel like he's valuing his time on the planet the way he should. Like the job is draining him of life. When you're right, when you're ready, let's slide our hands underneath our shoulders and we'll press ourselves up to hands and knees tabletop. As we get to tabletop, feel that shelf across the shoulders once again. That's kind of going to be our point of awareness as we curl our toes and roll back into down dog. We want to get to the point where we feel that musculature engage. It's likely relatively fatigued still. Again, that's a pretty weak set of musculature there in comparison to how big it is and what it has the capacity to do. So really think about shifting the weight into your hands, using the structure, and then letting the structure of the spine help support that musculature, even as it elongates. And then we'll walk ourselves forward and to the front of the mat. Inhale to half lift. Hold that length. Feel that back musculature once again. Really feeling the activation of that musculature right here. We're not even really holding weight, right? It's just staying in line with the rest of the musculature. And relax back into your fold. Allow that fatigue to help you elongate. And then when you're ready, awareness drifts to the sacrum. We're gonna roll ourselves up vertebrae by vertebrae, stacking the spine as we make our way into this top space. Hands come together at heart center. Let's take a couple of deep breaths as that back musculature relaxes a little bit. And then we are going to take our arms out to cactus, which is a mean thing to do with that back musculature. There's a little bit of a tendency, because that musculature is fatigued, for the elbow to want to drop. Keep the elbows up at shoulder height. And then we're going to slide the left foot straight back and behind us. And now we're going to use the kind of awareness that we've gathered with this back knee bend. And we're going to slowly lower ourselves down to the mat. And as the left knee touches the mat, arms extend up so that we catch this whole anterior sheath of musculature on that left thigh. Splay your fingers out wide, like you're trying to make your hands as big as possible, and reach those fingers towards the ceiling. And then hands are going to come to heart center. We're going to use that momentum, curl those left toes underneath you, and lift back up. There's a tendency to shortchange yourself here. Make sure you get all the way into the hip engagement and then slide back into the heel. And arms come back up to cactus. Roll to 2. Squeeze the elbows back, like you're trying to take the elbows behind you. Blossom the arms out, traditional warrior 2. Spin the left heel up, arms reach up, traditional crescent. Hands come together at heart center as we step to the front of the mat. Big exhale breath here. Let your body just settle here. Feel that anterior space on the left leg, whole front of the quad here. And try to settle across the pelvic bowl. Arms come up to, elbows come up to shoulder height, let's say. We're going out to cactus once again. And we'll slide the right leg straight back into crescent. Create the stability of your shape first. Think about being neutral in anterior and posterior chain. Then we slowly lower ourselves down. As the right knee touches, both hands reach straight up. And we're trying to elongate away from the front of the right thigh here. Finding that quad musculature and really reaching it into full potential. And hands come to heart center, curl the right toes, lift back up. Slide all the way back into the heel. Take the arms out to cactus. And then with cactus, we roll to 2. Squeeze the elbows back, like you're trying to take those elbows behind you. Blossom out traditional 2. Right heel spins up, both hands reach up to crescent. Hands drop to heart center, we return to the front of the mat. Inhale, sweep your arms. Exhale, forward fold. Grab opposite elbows and rock a little side to side. Feel the shoulder joint here as you move laterally with the torso. And even with some fatigue, try to pull those humeral heads back up into the shoulder socket so that as we rock, we're getting more and more integrated in the shoulders. while we're getting more and more integrated at the sacrum. And then eventually we're going to release our hands down on the mat, walk our way back into down dog. As you get back into that down dog, we have fatigue in the shoulders, we have fatigue in that high posterior chain. Really think about energizing into the hands to help create structural stability so that there's no collapse in this sternum space and that we're staying neutral along the spinal column. And then let's come down to hands and knees tabletop. And we're going to sink back into child's pose. Child's pose here is completely new in comparison to the first time we were here. I think we've only been here one time before. The anterior space in that hip crease, in the hip creases, is wide open here. Remember that the more engagement we have in our belly, the deeper our tailbone goes towards the back of the mat, the more we get that lumbar elongation, so that soft tissue in the low back can expand. And then you also have some good control here by where you place your thighs as to how much flexion is being supported in your spine. If you allow the torso to rest on the thighs, they're going to naturally go to that curvature. Your torso is going to naturally go to the curvature of the thighs. Take the thighs a little bit wider, the torso can fall forward just a touch more, and we can get a little more neutrality there. Totally what feels right for you at this point in your practice tonight. And we're going to give ourselves 30 more seconds. So this young man is just going on and on about how he feels like he's not being valued, and how he feels like he's taking away his life energy and he's taking away his time on the planet, and it's not being compensated the way he wants. And unbeknownst to either of these two partners, there is this hooded figure kind of sitting outside their window on this ledge. And he's listening to everything that's being said. He's dressed in all black, and the pouring rain is coming down, but it doesn't seem to be impacting or affecting him at all. When you feel right, when you feel ready, fingertips grip into the mat. Let's pull ourselves forward to hands and knees tabletop. From hands and knees tabletop, let's curl our toes, lift our seat, and find our way back into down dog as we get back into that down dog space. Drive the handprints and elongate through the spine into the tailbone. And let's take that cross walk forward once again. So if you remember which side you started with, start with the other side. If you don't remember, do the side that feels less natural. And we'll just walk our way all the way to the front of the mat until one of our feet makes it to the point where it should be, and we'll mirror with the other. Inhale the half lift. Hold that space. Think about this elongation. Eventually, we'll exhale all the way back into the fold, settling and elongating. Awareness drifts to the sacrum, and we'll sweep or roll ourselves all the way up into mountain pose. And from mountain, we're going to flex into the quads, flex into the glutes. Feel the activation in our shoulders. Take your right hand and take the right fingers into the palm of the left hand. So you can do this. Probably the easiest way for me to describe this is left palm is face up. Right hand is going to be fingerprints to basically the heel of the hand. There, that's a kind of visual. And then we'll extend the arms out, left hand up, right fingers facing towards the ceiling, left fingers facing down. So left hand is on top, right fingers are up. And we're just gonna pull back with that left hand. The same time, we're trying to keep all of our body alignment in cue. So we're not rolling out, we're really keeping the glutes engaged, the quads engaged, and we're getting some forearm activation here. At the same time, we also have the humeral head deeply plugged in. So we're pulling back into that shoulder plug in. And relax. And just feel the difference in the arms. You can actually see a pretty good size difference in my arms. And then we're gonna do the same thing to the second side. So right hand is down, left hand goes on top here, right? And then we bring our right hand over top and left hand fingertips pointed towards the ceiling, right hand finger pointed towards the ground, and we'll pull back with that right hand. Probably should call out, we have a pretty good flex here in the bicep tricep as well, right? So we're not having an elbow bend, we're locked out here, structurally integrated there so that we can get that shoulder retraction. So we really have the pull back and settle of the shoulders, quads are flexed, glutes are flexed. This is essentially just a mirroring of a calf stretch, right? We're just doing it with our arms. And we relax. And now we have a much more symmetrical arm positioning. Let's sweep our hands to heart center. Feel that fatigue still around the forearms, around the shoulders. Sink the seat to Malasana. So we haven't done it in a while, I think. And then let's extend back. And we'll follow that with a forward fold. Big, deep inhale. Nice, deep exhale. Big, deep inhale. Nice, deep exhale, finding that a little bit of additional space that might be waiting and available for you. Last 25 seconds here. And when you are right, we'll bring the torso back up towards vertical, and then we are headed onto our backs. Settling into quite a bit of upper body work tonight. And let's just give ourselves this moment of appreciation. My favorite point in class here. So the next morning, this young man gets up before sunrise. He gets ready for work. It's kind of a dreary day again. It's foggy, it's misting. He walks outside and turns right on the sidewalk, headed towards his job. And he runs into a man he's never seen or met before. And it happens to be the same man who is listening in on his conversation with his partner last night. He's still dressed in all black, still wearing this hood. And again, the rain just doesn't seem to be impacting him. This man is very clearly well off. He's dressed impeccably, even if it's all black and a hood. And he asks this young man where he's going in such a hurry. When you're ready, let's bring our knees into a bent position, kneecaps point towards the ceiling, and we'll start a little dynamic sway. Remember that this does not have to be full rotation. So if your back musculature doesn't feel like allowing you to go lateral edge to the floor, don't. Just go to what feels comfortable, what feels expansive. But we're moving here just with fluidity, left to right into what feels accessible. Maybe that's all the way to the floor, maybe that's not. But we are moving with fluidity here. So just going back and forth at a reasonably slow tempo. And then eventually, we're going to bring our knees back to neutral. And we are going to let the bottoms of the feet come together and the knees fall out wide. And with an inhale, we're going to bring the thighs and the knees together. You can keep the bottoms of the feet together, or you can let them roll to the mat. And then exhale, knees are going to fall out wide once again. And we're going to do that a couple more times. So inhale, knees come up towards together. Exhale, bottoms of the feet come together, knees fall out wide. And maybe one last time. And then knees fall out wide. And now we're going to start some very slow, very subtle movement. So this little butterflying of the knees, but no more than an inch of movement. Less is probably ideal. And a very controlled, reasonably slow tempo here. And so this well-off man in all black asks this young man where he's going. He says, I'm going to work. You need to get out of my way. I'm headed there quickly. This well-off man says, well, hold on. What do you do for work? And the young man says, if you want to ask me questions, you're going to need to walk with me. And so the man dressed in all black walks with him. He says, I'm a laborer. He says, oh, that sounds like you must work hard. The young man says, I do. I work hard. I work long hours. And I'm not thrilled with it, to be honest. The next time the knees come up, let's let them come all the way up. Kneecaps point towards the ceiling. And let your knees rock a little side to side once again. See if there's a impact or a difference in how much space you have. And then eventually, we're going to let our knees fall over to the left. And so this well-dressed man says, you know, if you don't like your job, I might have a proposition for you. The young man kind of rolls his eyes. He's like, oh yeah, what's that? And this well-dressed man says, you know, would I entice you with an offer of $10 million? And the young man laughed, like, would you entice me with an offer of $10 million? What's the catch? When you're right, when you're ready, bring your knees back to neutral. And we'll exhale and let the knees fall over to that second side, the right side. When you're right, when you're ready, knees come back to neutral. Let your eyes close, let your awareness drift within. Ask yourself if there's anything you want, need, desire, would benefit from before Shavasana. And if there is, offer that to yourself. And this well-dressed man gets this very wry, very wicked smile. He says, ah, you are a smart lad. There is, of course, a catch. When you're right, when you're ready, just drifting into your version of stillness this evening.
So this man dressed in all black says, of course there's a catch. And if you take my $10 million today, your life will end tomorrow. Do we have a deal? And that wicked smile rolls back across his face. The young man instantly says, we do not have a deal. And he goes to push this man. The man is gone. He disappeared into the fog of the morning almost as quickly as the question was answered. So to bring some movement to your fingers and your toes. To your wrist and your ankles. Elbows and knees. Shoulders and hips. Neck and head. Eventually, we'll utilize the movement traveling through our body to transition from the shape we are in back into a seat. Spine gets tall, breath gets fluid, eyes closed. And we'll inhale our hands together, heart center. Over the course of the next 7 days, can you ask yourself what you would do if someone offered you financial reward in exchange for your life? And make sure you're valuing it that way. Thank you so much for being a part of this evening's practice and for being you. Namaste. Happy Monday, guys. Appreciate the heck out of you being here. Love you. I will be back next Sunday to recharge, and we'll do this again next Monday. Have a beautiful week.